Hi, I'm Sydney and I am a servant of the Almighty God. I am the founder of SOTAG. SOTAG, or Servants of the Almighty God, are people from any religion, any walk of life, who believe in truth, love, and the brotherhood of mankind. Today I want to talk about evolution and trying to give you some information that evolution was designed by God. See, way back, I guess in some point in science, around the time of on the origin of species, or maybe even before that, right? Scientists, they started talking about, at some point it was about we evolved from this random sequence of events. And inspiration that came to me basically is that random makes sense when you don't when there are no rules, right? There are no rules that govern the sequence of events, or we don't understand those rules. So many things over time, as our knowledge advances, we'll find that things that we said, oh, this was random, we may find out, oh, now there are rules. And one of the ways we can distinguish that there are rules is not only we can find patterns, but we are also able to predict. Right? Random, you just can't predict. So what I want to show here is that all our knowledge is simply expanding the ability to find those rules. And so the contention is that all our knowledge are revelations from the Almighty, omnipotent God. So, and basically what we are doing is we are discovering the rules of creation. So let me back up a little bit, and I'll start first with the elements that surround us. Again, before we found the rules, we discovered the rules that govern these, the elements around us. It was just random stuff, we even tried with alchemy and all that stuff, turn lead into gold and all that type of stuff. But then we started discovering that which existed even before the dinosaurs, from the beginning of creation. We started discovering that there are rules about all the elements. Now we know those rules, and we've placed those things in the periodic table. So we have, hydrogen, helium, and we go up the atomic weights, and we're finding out the subatomic elements within these primitive elements. We can also find, besides these particles, we can determine what kind of reactions, what kind of compounds, right? And by discovering the rules that govern the periodic table, we were able to predict elements that we had not discovered as yet, just based on their placement in this periodic table. So you see, we went from where there was air, and there was sand, and there is lead, and there is gold, and there's all these things, to finding out the rules that govern these things. And so things that would appear to be random, and unconnected, we can now see these are the rules that govern each of these elements. Even the new elements that we're using now, the rare earth elements and all of that stuff, we can predict their properties. So again, we went from what was random to now there are rules. It's not random. Another example, it's the the weather, right? The weather could seem pretty random, but now we can predict days, sometimes even weeks ahead, because we understand the rules that govern that. And there are some things that we, again, our knowledge, we may think that we know everything, but really we are not. How old is our stack of knowledge? It's not that deep. And so, yes, it's expanding, it's growing, and just like you had those who sought truth from the spiritual world and got the scriptures with the commandments, the real rule of law, the original rule of law that applies to everyone and no one is above it, they sought truth. Well, now, the beautiful thing about science is that you have a hypothesis, you have to go out there, you prove it, and then others have to be able to repeat that. So that's the beauty of science, because these are the laws of nature that we are discovering. Again, all of it already exists. We are simply discovering these rules and basically turning things that were random into known. It's no longer random. Right? The rules, it's basically the laws of creation is what we're discovering. So when we look at plants and animals, we see, there are these examples, the sounds, the smells, the colorations, all of these things. It would have taken a lot of intelligence by these different animals and plants to implement the colorations, the smells, the sounds that animals make that enable them to find mate or recognize danger or to ward off predators, and all of that. It would take a lot of intelligence. And so we go like, well, it's random, but we start seeing now that there is. Like, one of the beautiful things I love to use is bees from any part of the planet. Within that bee, there is an intelligence that says when you find food, you can come back to the hive, and you can basically communicate that. And everybody gets it. Everybody gets that. Every bee in there gets that information. So there is a really advanced, although innate, level of intelligence that went into their design, because they're not going to school, they're not learning language, but it's in there. It's the same with fish. It's the same, we see salmon being born, and they up in a river, and they go down to the sea, and then they try to get back up there. All of that, right? Because we haven't discovered the rules that govern that and that all the mechanisms, does not mean that it doesn't exist. It's obvious. It's like gravity, right? We know it's there because it has an impact, and we can observe it. We may not fully be able to explain it. And one of the beautiful, of course, with us, when we can explain something, it's like light. When we understand light energy and the various frequencies that go into it, now we can control that. We can create light. We can manipulate light. So much so that we can store information into photons and send it at the speed of light down fiber optic cables and all that stuff. So this is what happens as our knowledge expands and we understand the rules. So a lot of it is still outside our purview. We do not yet understand it. But the beautiful thing is, as our knowledge expands and these rules become more apparent, more and more of what we thought was random suddenly becomes, oh no, we understand the rules of that now. And so this, even with our rather primitive, if you consider, and his intelligence being billions of years ahead of us, the Creator is so far advanced. But even with our somewhat limited, relatively limited knowledge and education, we have advanced to the point where we are using AI. And that's kind of like the area. I'm a software engineer, and I've been that for a long time, from almost every platform, from front end to back. I'm a big data DBA, I know graph and non-SQL. So I know from the database side, I've programmed in many, many languages, front end stuff. So I know that stuff. And I think that's part of the reason that I've been fortunate and blessed with this, the gift of the understanding and understand this, and so I can bring this to you. So we have advanced to the point where I'm sure you've heard of autonomous driving, right? So there is, you have sensors like our eyes and our ears, we pick up information and we say, okay, no, this is where I'm going to walk. I'm not just going to walk straight here because there's a chair there. I'm going to go around this chair. We don't need GPS. Well, we need GPS when there are roads, but to get from point A to point B, we use all these different things, all this information that enables us to navigate. Remember, he has enabled bees and birds and butterflies and fish to navigate without that. Think about it. Think about that. So we're not quite sure, we don't know, quite understand how he did it, because the Creator is billions of years ahead of us. But we have advanced to the point where we're talking about autonomous driving. This is still a step below machine learning, because not only will it, in autonomous, we have like a fixed database of things, and it interrogates it all the time, whether it's visual or other things to navigate. With machine learning, it's even better. It goes and says, okay, the machine is now accumulating information which it can refer to say, oh, in the past this happened, so I can make better decisions, not just based on what I started with, but I can deduce things on other things that I have learned. Well, guess what? The Creator is, again, billions. And this is why when we recognize the omnipresent and the omnipotence of the Creator, we will become God-fearing when we recognize His machine learning. It's not just done for ours, it's machines. He does it within the cells. We are finding out now that DNA, which existed from creation, within the DNA we have these genes, and that's at the level that as He granted us autonomy, He has also built that intelligence, just like He did with the bees and the fish. He's granted that autonomy and that intelligence within those genes so that they react to external conditions, which is what we want to do with our machine learning, to react to external conditions to create, to modify, to create mutations. And those mutations now, because they have adapted to these conditions, they survive and they become the prominent, and so that branch of evolution takes off. This is His machine learning. And so this, as again, we would not have known that in the 1800s, even in the mid-19th century and in the early 20th century, we wouldn't have known these things. But now we're getting into the 21st and going on, we are dabbling with these things. And so as our knowledge expands, a lot of the things that were random no longer is. And we must recognize this, that everything that we are doing, all our knowledge, it's revelation of what already existed. We are not creating any of this. We may use different elements to create things that may not have existed, but the raw materials are already there. All the medicines that we are creating is based on understanding the rules of what's already there. And so our knowledge expansion is revelations from Him that manifest His omnipotence. So we have to recognize that God designed evolution so that that's His version of machine learning, where the genes autonomously, which he has granted us as he has granted us free will. That the genes can react to these external conditions, cause these mutations, and he is not like sitting here. We send something to Mars and we have to sit here and monitor it. It's like, no, I have granted it autonomy because of my advanced intelligence, which is where we want to go with autonomous and better machine learning, where the machine learns. So evolution is God's version of machine learning implemented. And so we have to recognize that all our knowledge are revelations from God that manifest his omnipotence. I thank you for taking the time, and hopefully I will be continuing with these sessions. There are quite a few. So thank you for taking the time. And until next time, take care, and God bless.